Taking a trip into Wonderland is usually filled with the croquet game against the queen, stories told by two-round brothers, and tea parties with Mad Hatters. You don't usually encounter porcelain-faced black goo, spider teapots, and soldier cards with gaping holes in their chests, but in the video game Alice Madness Returns, that is exactly what young Alice Liddell is facing. The Xbox 360 game came out in 2011, and it explores a new, terrifying Wonderland, as well as the tragic, broken mind of 19-year-old Alice. Alice's story is a central theme throughout the game as you are collecting her lost memories while you are battling through Wonderland. To understand why she is battling this amnesia, you must start at the beginning. Scorching heat and cries of pain is what met Alice one faithful night. A house fire that burned not only Alice's house down, but also left her the sole survivor besides her pet cat Dinah. The fire was investigated, and it was ruled that the cat Dinah knocked over a lantern in the library, which caused the house to quickly go up in flames. With her family now dead, Alice's mind shattered, and she is forced to be moved into a psychiatric clinic. She is eventually released after being deemed mentally sane, and at the start of the game, we see her residing in an orphanage. It's specifically an orphanage for the mentally traumatized, where Alice works for and is under the care of Dr. Angus Bumby. She runs errands and helps with the children at the orphanage, but really, Alice wants to forget about her traumatic past. She goes under hypnotherapy, along with the other orphans, with Dr. Bumby. In the first cutscene, we see the first display of Alice's tattered mind in a chilling display of a dream during a hypnotherapy session. We see a terrifying version of Wonderland and gut-wrenching lines given by Alice.
It's killing me! Wonderland is destroyed! My mind is in ruins!
Alice wants to forget, and Dr. Bumby tells her forgetting will set her free. After her session with the doctor, Alice heads out into London. We see a rather cheerful display of prostitutes, police brutality, and children talking to walls. However, most interestingly is a white cat that seems to be hanging around the alley. She follows the cat through the alley, and we end up meeting an old friend who is Alice's ex-caretaker at the asylum, Pris Witless. Pris gives us our second cutscene, and a rather jarring one at that. She gives us more details of the day of the fire, as well as information about Alice's time in the asylum. According to Witless, Alice was in the asylum for 10 years, and in her opinion, it didn't help Alice's mental state. Pris eventually was the one that got Alice a spot with Dr. Bumby, and it reveals that she blackmails Alice money in exchange for silence.
Kept her secret, haven't I? Heard her say, all died on my account, I couldn't save you.
We can also see other town folks say that Alice killed her family. Pris ends up forcing Alice to come with her to a rooftop pigeon coop. While Alice talks with Pris, Miss Witless transforms into a hideous beast, and Alice ends up for the first time in-game to Wonderland. Alice lands in an area called the Vale of Tears, a very pretty-looking Wonderland forest, but a quick chat with the Cheshire Cat warns Alice of the dangers that lie ahead.
Abandon that hope. A new law reigns in this Wonderland, Alice. It's very rough justice all round. We're at risk here. You be on your guard.
While the player learns game mechanics, Alice discovers her first memory. It's nothing life-altering, just a little quote from her family, but we start to see how this altered version of Wonderland is giving us insight into Alice's twisted mind. Memories come in different shapes, and the speakers behind the shapes are important people throughout Alice's life. Memories that are in the shape of her home are quick snippets from her family members. Glasses are for Dr. Bumby, liquor bottles are for Pris, syringes are for Dr. Wilson, who is Alice's doctor during her time at the asylum, feathers are for Alice's old nanny, Nan Sharp, and lastly, pens are for the Liddell family lawyer, Mr. Radcliffe. When you first land in the Vale of Tears, it seems almost normal for Wonderland, but the further you go in, you see it start to change. Blood tears now run down Alice's cheeks, and insidious ruins plague the land. As Alice continues through Wonderland, she ends up surrounded by red rock with teapot towns scattered throughout. Green goblin-looking creatures inhabit the towns and are called madcaps. The The madcaps are the Mad Hatter's henchmen, and you fight them while moving towards the grand floating factory where the Hatter resides. Alice enters what looks like a teapot cable car, and while she is in it, the Cheshire Cat tells her that the Hatter can give her answers to what exactly is happening to her beloved Wonderland.
Find the Hatter, Alice. He knows more about different than you.
While Alice braves the factory, she encounters more horrors like the spider teapots I talked about before, but she also gets her first flashback. The flashback relates to the fire as Alice talks about her family library being a great place to start a fire.
Our lovely library was a fire trap. A conflagration waiting to happen.
Alice eventually finds the Mad Hatter, but he has been dismembered and only his head remains. Using the leftover parts in the area around her, Alice helps put the Hatter back on a body while he explains to Alice what he knows. The Hatter tells her that a train is tearing through Wonderland and leaving destruction in its wake. The Hatter refers to it as the Infernal Train, and it is the cause of the corruption taking hold over Wonderland. The train is as sturdy and tall as a fortress and is conducted by a man known as the Dollmaker. The train needs to be stopped, and Alice asks the Mad Hatter for help, which he agrees to only if she can get his arms and legs, which have been stolen by the Dormouse and the Hare, who also now control the factory. They are the ones who have started and are now finishing the construction of the Infernal Train. Once Alice helps the Hatter get reassembled with all his limbs, he grabs her and takes her to the center of the factory where the Infernal Train is now finished being built. However, it's too late, and the train is already on a course ready to destroy all of Wonderland. To catch it, Alice tries to set off, but is stopped by the Dormouse and the Hare, who she boss battles. Alice is successful, but it doesn't do much good as the once grand factory is now crumbling. She tries to get information out of the Hatter, but he is already too far gone in his grief and tells her to ask the Mock Turtle.
Time for whatever it is you want to talk about. It's time for tea. Talk trains with Turtle. He ran the Looking Glass line.
Alice awakes back in London after she was saved by a couple of fishermen from a river. Alice heads to a nearby brothel, which is now owned by her old nanny, Nan Sharp. When Alice arrives, we see Nan Sharp and a gentleman getting into an argument, and it eventually turns violent. Alice steps up to help and gets slapped by the gentleman, and it propels her into Wonderland once again. This time, Alice lands in a frozen tundra-like terrain with a ship and a glass bottle in the distance. Alice heads towards the ship as she remembers what the Hatter told her, that she needs to speak with the Mock Turtle, who was the station master of the old Looking Glass Line Railway, but now wears a ship captain's hat. Alice reaches the ship, and the two dive into the diluted depths. They crash land, and this causes the Mock Turtle to be too shaken up to tell Alice anything. He does, however, tell her to go see the carpenter who is putting on a show in the town. As Alice heads into town, we see our second flashback.
I was the last one in the library the night of the fire. The log I added to the grate was dead when I went upstairs to bed with Dinah. If it wasn't, I may be responsible for my family's deaths.
Alice eventually arrives at the theater, but the carpenter tells Alice that he will give her the information she is seeking only if she helps him with his grand show. He asks her to get a script, a singer, and a collection of performers for the event. Alice braves the depths and comes back with the items the carpenter has asked for. However, Alice has also figured out the truth about the carpenter and the walrus. Like the original story in Alice in Wonderland, the carpenter and the walrus are killers and eat the local townfolk. The show is a ploy to get the actors of the show to become the dinner menu. This causes the actors to panic, and chaos erupts in the theater just as the Infernal Train makes its appearance. As it is tearing through the depths, the carpenter grabs Alice and tells her that the train is her doing and that she needs to go speak to the caterpillar. Alice once again wakes up in London to see that the brothel has gone up in flames. The gentleman who hit Alice and was threatening Miss Sharp was arrested for being the fire starter. Nan rescued Alice from the fire, and they set off to go see Mr. Radcliffe, who is the Liddell family lawyer. He handled things with Alice's house after it burned down, and Alice suspects that Radcliffe was the one who had taken her stuffed rabbit. It turned out to be true, and Alice confronts Radcliffe about it, who then starts explaining his side of the story.
Killing memories and her need to know the truth. The alleged truth is, the fire began in the library when the cat knocked over a lamp. The blaze trapped her parents and sister upstairs. Sister Lizzie never even unlocked her door. Died in her bed. The guilty cat always sets her off. She denies it. Makes no sense. It can't be, etc. Agreed. From the outset, Alice was my candidate for the pyromaniac. The girl had a fixation with fire. I once remarked that I thought she might have had a larger role in causing the tragedy. She suffered some sort of psychotic episode.
This causes Alice to descend into Wonderland once again. She lands in an area called the Vale of Doom, which resembles a London/Wonderland mashup. Alice must travel to the center of the Vale to speak to the caterpillar. Alice finds a mountain combined with a smoking pipe at the center, which she inhales from. This causes Alice to shrink and she enters the mysterious mountain. It transports her into an area called the Oriental Grove, where she helps a village of origami ants against killer samurai wasps after she is told that she must defeat them in order to reach the caterpillar. Alice also travels through paintings which help unlock the next flashback.
Dinah saved my life. I survived because she showed me how to escape. I didn't leave the lamp in the library, and Dinah didn't knock it over. The lamp and Dinah were upstairs when I went to bed. Dinah was in the room with me when the fire started.
Alice eventually meets the caterpillar in person, and he immediately transforms into a butterfly and tells Alice she needs to speak to the Queen of Hearts.
Much has changed, but you've got it backwards. Save Wonderland, and you may save yourself. The carpenter was onto something, but he was hiding from the real. Your goal is to accept it.
Where should I go then? What should I do?
The Queen must be served, Alice. The Queen in all her guises must always be served.
Alice awakes in a jail cell with 2 guards watching over her. The guards have apprehended her after she was causing a disturbance.
She screams, "You miserable cur, you leech, you maggot, living off another's labour," etc., etc. I'm admiring her line of inquiry, but suddenly she hits her head or something and faints.
She is let go after the guards agree that she isn't going to danger herself or others. Back on the street, Alice is once again transported into Wonderland. Endless sky and structures made from cards are what first greet Alice, but as she slides down further, she is eventually at the decrepit castle where the Queen of Hearts now resides. The White King blocks Alice's path and she must smash her way through to get passage into the castle. Now inside, Alice is met with a new foe, the Executioner, who chases Alice with a fearsome scythe all throughout the castle. It leads Alice to a maze where she gets cornered by the Executioner until she sees a cake labeled "Eat Me." In true Alice in Wonderland fashion, the cake makes Alice grow and she is now big enough to smash the Executioner as well as the other card soldiers so she can push forward to meet the Queen. Alice finally meets with the Queen, who looks strangely like Alice. They discuss how Alice and the Queen are connected, mind, body, and soul, and the Queen tells Alice to look at all the evidence around her.
See the pattern of destruction? I know you do. The train is trying to destroy all evidence of your past, and especially the fire. Now, who would want that? Who benefits from your madness?
The destruction of Wonderland is the destruction of me.
Indeed, and vice versa.
I've set it in motion. I can derail it. This is good for me. I'm not insane. I didn't kill my family. I am fine. I'm not mad. I'm innocent. I mean, not guilty. What's happening? What are you doing?
The train must be stopped, but there's more to do. Your view conceals a tragedy. The whole truth you claim to see eludes you because you won't look at what's around you.
The Queen then consumes Alice, ending her time in the Queen of Hearts domain. This time, when Alice awakes, we see a terrifying situation beholding her. It appears that Alice has been transported back to the asylum, as we now see Alice with a shaved head in a rubber room with a straitjacket on. As she wanders through the asylum, we see scenes of horrible treatment used on patients, old friends from Wonderland, as well as a conversation between Alice and all the people she collects memories from.
Am I not to be as much honored and obeyed as the Queen? Is that asking too much? I want what she wanted. Give yourself over to that. Trade the tentacles for the train. It's altogether a better ride. It's that or back to Rutledge.
Never a kind word or reward for services rendered. Don't I deserve a bit of luck? Don't piss on what's right knowing to me, I say. Brought you out of the asylum, now you go back on your own accord.
I told your mother, dear. You're a distant and stubborn child, too content in her own world. Young women need to leave their wonderlands. The real world is not so wonderful. You'll need to grow up. Perhaps some more time in care?
You look decent enough, but appearances deceive. I know you for an unstable and violent person. I can't say I'm surprised you've been incarcerated in the asylum again. A long stay under supervision would serve you right.
As Alice continues through the asylum, however, we see that what she is seeing is all an illusion and she is still in Wonderland. As Alice walks around in the fog, we see a child crawling up to Alice begging for her to help the insane children. The child dies, but as Alice continues forward, we see an image of her burning house and get transported into an area known as the dollhouse. The dollhouse is true to its name, with child dollhouses being the main structure throughout the chapter. Alice finds the insane children who are mangled and who tell her about the horrible dollmaker who has stolen pieces off of their bodies. If you remember, he is the conductor of the infernal train and is the main cause of all of Wonderland's troubles. Alice continues her journey through the dollhouses, fighting porcelain dolls throughout until she reaches where the dollmaker resides. However, we get one final flashback that gives us the real culprit of the fire.
I had a role in my family's demise, but I did not start the fire. Centaurs don't live in Oxford, but a certain doctor did. I saw him, a preening undergraduate. Now I remember him. That key belongs to Lizzie's room.
The man in the flashback and the dollmaker all share a resemblance to one Angus Bumby. It turns out that Bumby is using his power as a psychiatrist to trick the orphans under his care into forgetting their memories so he can sell them into prostitution. Even worse, a memory that Alice collects in the game reveals to you that Bumby was an Oxford undergraduate who was being mentored by Alice's dad.
His hand was slimy, Alice, like an eel from the Isis. And his name won't help. Bumby. If he ever qualifies, his bedside manner will require improvement.
Bumby was inappropriate with Alice's sister Lizzie, and on the day of the fire, Bumby had snuck into Lizzie's room and assaulted her. The fire was just a cover-up. The dollmaker tries to turn Alice into a doll like he has done to all of the other orphans, but Alice is strong, and it doesn't work. Alice, now back on the streets of London, tracks down Bumby to a train station.
You oozing sore of depravity! Children wearing their names around their necks as if they're breeding livestock!
A declaration of their pedigree. You could use one. They're proud to display their provenance.
You brute! They can't remember who they are or where they're from. How many minds have you twisted into forgetfulness?
Not enough. Yours would have been a triumph. Still, you're an insane wreck. My work is done.
Alice ends up on the infernal train. She ends up fighting the wicked dollmaker and eventually defeats him. As she wakes up in London once more back at the train station with Bumby, Alice threatens to have him thrown in jail.
I'll see you charged. In prison, some half-wit bruiser will make you his sweetheart, and then you'll hang.
Indeed. A hysterical woman, former lunatic, roaring outrageous accusations against a respectable social architect and scientist. My God, Alice, who would believe you? I scarcely believe it myself.
No one in their right mind would listen to her, and Alice agrees. Alice takes matters into her own hands, and with her London and Wonderland self combined, she pushes Bumby into an ongoing train, killing him. As she steps out of the train station, we see a vibrant display of a Wonderland/London mix that we now come to know as Wonderland. Alice's worlds are now forever combined, but she now knows and accepts her past and her present.